probably get started. I'm sure we'll have some people joining as we go, but that's okay. Everybody, my name is Marcy Patterson. I run our solution consulting team here at Blink. Joining me is Harriet Davey. Harriet's one of our solution architects. She works out of our UK office. And we're here today to talk about how you can connect and engage and provide support to your frontline workforce, despite the fact that you might not have email addresses for that frontline workforce. And just for an agenda, I'm going to spend a little bit of time up front sort of framing the problem as we see it and as our customers have explained it to us. I'm going to give a brief product demonstration. I'll be doing that on my mobile phone, which we find that most of our customers, when they're looking to engage with their frontline workforce, maybe through a kiosk, maybe through a shared desktop, but as we look to modernize that experience, we really want to deliver it where they are when they are there. And so the mobile device becomes probably the predominant means of connecting and engaging with those employees. Once we're through that product demonstration, Harriet's going to really drill a bit deeper into the technical aspects of connecting to employees, despite the fact that they don't have an email address, and then what that connection can open up within your organization. And then we'll do a Q&A. I just want to set expectations. I honestly think this will probably be about 30 minutes, depending on how many questions we have, but maybe 7 to 10 minutes up front framing the problem, about a 10-minute product demo, about 10 minutes on the tech, and then we'll open up for questions, just so folks know how long you can expect to be on the line today. Again, I'll say one more time, we do have a Q&A section within the webinar platform, and we'll also be sending out some polls throughout the experience just to get some engagement and some feedback for you. So super excited to be here, super excited to talk about this problem. I'll be frank. We do different webinar series throughout the year, and this particular content is one of our highest rates of attendance. And I think because it's a very common problem. So let's just talk about what that problem is. You're trying to solve this employee experience puzzle. As an organization, I presume you're looking to connect your frontline employees in particular to the organization's culture, to the organization's ethos, and to the organization's transformation that you're undergoing, as a lot of organizations are investing in different levels of digital transformation and also now sort of this AI transformation. At the same time, you're looking to engage these frontline employees. I think we can all recognize that a more engaged workforce results in better outcomes. So how do you engage those employees in sort of a bi-directional conversation? How do you get feedback from those employees? And then finally, how do you support those employees? Support them in the work that they need to get done and support them in managing their own work lives. And I think it's sort of that third pillar there, that support pillar, where you can really start unlocking value. So you can help people help themselves by giving them the mechanisms to do self-service. That's going to reduce your spend on HR help desk, reduce your spend on IT help desk, and also reduce some of the frustrations of a frontline workforce who doesn't know where to go to get answers. And that certainly influences attrition and retention. Secondly, that support pillar is about driving clarity. When an employee understands what's required of them within a particular day, within a particular shift, within a particular area of the business, it's going to drive better action. It's better when people know exactly what's expected of them and how are you communicating that to them today. And then finally, access enables work. From a support perspective, if you're supporting these employees by giving them access to the things that allow them to do their work more easily, again, it's going to have a positive impact on your business. But in order to get to that sort of third pillar where you're supporting these employees in a meaningful way, you got to get them in first. You've got to solve that connection issue. And I talk to a lot of companies in a lot of different verticals, whether it's manufacturing workers on the manufacturing floor, retail and hospitality in stores or in hotels, or healthcare workers, whether they're coming in and out of hospital systems or home healthcare workers. We do quite a bit of business in those specific verticals amongst many others. And so when I started with Blink and I started understanding some of these problems we're looking to solve, I was frankly surprised by the number of organizations that lack a digital identity for these frontline workers. And so you think, why is that? It's a lot of reasons. They're listed here. I'm sure you've been reading them while I've been talking. Licensing and support costs. The license costs of these email addresses can be quite high. And for anybody who's managed email in an organization, distribution groups, people coming in and out of the organization, it can add a lot of complexity. And so I think there's a reluctance on the part of organizations managing a workforce that tends to have a high turnover to try to manage and invest in email addresses for those workers. There's also compensatory time concerns. If we're providing information to an employee, perhaps on their own mobile device, am I going to be asked to pay those folks for that work? And how do I manage that? There's language differences. How do I communicate with these folks, particularly if it's over email? Sort of the translation complexity with email can be one of the obstacles. And then again, compliance constraints and union considerations. So these are all of the obstacles that we often hear from organizations as they're looking to connect and engage with a frontline workforce. And so it tends to sort of stop an initiative in its tracks or makes that initiative hard to get over the line. But the question is, at what cost? What is it costing you to have these folks disconnected from your organization? And this is a third-party analyst who has estimated it's about $80,000 per employee per year to have them feel and be disconnected from the organization. And those costs come from a variety of ways. You know, one of the ones that it makes me smile just because it surprises me is we have organizations who are still spending a lot of money sending information via the mail, and that adds up. So these simple things that could be automated, you know, you're doing a lot within your corporate organization for your desk-based workers to transform, to do some business process transformation, but how are you going to plug this frontline into that process transformation? And what are the benefits as you continue to transform of getting those frontline workers plugged in so you can continue to deliver use cases, particularly as we start leaning into AI and we look at agentic use cases and how those use cases might be able to influence the productivity of the frontline workforce. So that's the framing of the problem part of the agenda. I'm actually going to now just give you a quick demo of Blink. So I'll start. Sorry, Amelia. Before I jump in, let me just set the table on who we are. So we are an experience layer. We are mobile first. We also have a desktop application, web-based application. You could actually run our web-based application from a mobile device, which is interesting for organizations who are worried about asking their employees to download an app onto their device. Although many organizations we speak to are potentially asking employees already to download multiple applications on their phone. And that's the other sort of service that Blink plays, is taking all of those multiple applications and wrapping them into a single experience layer that's also super easy to manage from a change management perspective. So as you continue to develop these use cases, your ability to deliver these use cases in a low cost and meaningful way to the frontline employee is vastly accelerated. So I'm going to give you a demo. So Amelia, if you'll stop the slides, I'm going to share my mobile device. We practiced this. I'm very confident it's going to go extremely well. So this is Blink. I'm accessed this on my mobile device for a branded organization. So this is a fake company called Kintara. You have the ability to brand Blink and make it your own. You can do that from a full white labeling perspective, or just brand, call it Blink, download Blink, but then once I go into the application, it's fully branded to my colors, my company brand. So as I come into Blink, it's a communications and engagement solution, and we're really delivering that in a very modern and social way. And that's quite purposeful because we're trying with the frontline workforce to get them very comfortable on leveraging this solution without really any training. And you have a lot of options here as to what you want to deliver to the organization. So as an example, at the top, I have a couple of stories. Stories are a nice way of invoking that social side of the equation and keeping it sort of at the top, again, in a very familiar way. That's a picture of my mother's dog. I felt like you'd like to share. I'd like to share that with you. Just below that are smart alerts. So I talked about Blink as the intelligent sort of layer, this experience layer. That experience layer extends across your enterprise tech stack. So here I'm seeing smart alerts that could be coming from Workday, that could be coming from ServiceNow, that could be coming from other learning development systems or expense systems. Blink becomes an enhanced notification engine for informing the worker of the things they need to get done. And if you think about the manufacturing floor or the retail worker, if there's compliance related activity that needs to be done, what's it costing you to chase these employees down to get that type of work done? And how can we make that simpler to deliver and simpler for them to execute on? As an example, there's a post here from the Health and Safety Department. All of the communications that are coming in through Blink are targeted. They're targeted to a particular group or team, and you have the ability to create those teams drafting off of your authoritative user source. We really don't want you managing user data in Blink. We'd much rather carry that over from your HR system, and we'll leverage that data to dynamically create these groups so that you can do that targeted communication. So I can read the new PPE protocol, and if you want them to attest to the fact that they've read this, that is built into the platform, and we can manage the audit trail associated to that attestation. Again, we're sort of mixing the social and the operational within this feed, which is what you're seeing here on my screen, the Blink feed. So here I'm just asking in a very visual and fun way, what type of venue should we choose for our holiday get-together? I can look at trending posts. I can do congratulations and kudos. We can integrate into your HR system to automatically send out birthday notifications. Happy birthday, happy anniversary, happy 10-year work anniversary to you. All of those things automated at scale to make these users feel connected and engaged, but to allow you to do that without that heavy lift. One of the most common use cases we hear about customers is sort of plugging into the programmatic initiatives you're running and how much value or return on investment are you getting from those initiatives? So benefits enrollment is certainly an initiative that a lot of organizations have to go through every year. How can we make it simpler and easier for that benefit initiative to carry forth and to have users engaging in a timely manner? So all sorts of different posts here can be sent from corporate, could be team-based, your retail store manager sending a note at the beginning of the day. Here's our targets for the day. Here's what we need to update from the store systems. Here's a link to the visuals of what that needs to look like, all within a single app. Additionally, we do provide chat. So this is a secure chat feature in Blink, again, because many of these frontline workers don't have a digital identity. They also don't have a corporate chat system. I will tell you they are likely chatting with each other, probably on WhatsApp or on Messenger. This gives you the opportunity to give them access to chat in a secure way, and when they leave the organization, they're going to automatically be pulled out of these chat groups, which is also significant. Again, this is a great way for frontline managers to connect and engage with their team. If they need to fill a shift, if there's a disruption in service, they can quickly and easily communicate. This is probably one of the biggest feedbacks we get from our customers is the how chat has enabled their teams to work better together. Groups is our ability to have community interest groups, as well as we talked about those teams. Which teams am I part of? And we can dynamically assign those teams based on my role, my location, my level. And then finally, the hub. And this is where we tie it all together. This is where we provide that access to both third-party systems, to actions that are going to make it easier for me to do my job on a day-to-day basis, whether that's by giving me quick access to contact my manager or quick Ask HR. This is also where you can really evolve. So maybe Ask HR today is a form, and then as you release a virtual agent, Ask HR is a virtual agent, and then when you release Agentic AI, Ask HR actually walks through a process and manages the whole process for me. So the ability to sort of layer maturity into Blink and do the change management behind it very simply is certainly one of the huge values. And then additionally, we have the ability to manage people, policies, page content that you need to give these users. And all of the information I'm seeing in the hub is based on those same groups we already talked about. So if I'm a manufacturing worker in the UK, I'm going to see access to different information than a manufacturing worker perhaps in the US. If I'm a frontline manager, I'm going to have access to different information than some of my frontline employees might have. And we can also connect those third-party systems. In this case, for this particular demo, I'm actually integrated into Workday. So if I have Workday as my payroll from a single source, I can jump into Workday and actually see my payslip. And likewise, if I want to update my benefit information or I want to go to my learning, I can do a quick click and get right to my learning. All of that might be going to the same system, again, in this case, Workday, but we're just making it really easy for the end user to understand how we get there. And then we integrate that through the feed. So the feed notification might say, hey, you have a new learning. If I open that up, that's going to bring me right into Workday or whatever your HR system is. So it's a really very integrated experience across that connection, that engagement, and that access, giving your employees the support they need to get their job done. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing unless, Harriet, you think I've missed anything.
No, just I think the only point is we've got a few individuals on from various European locations and across the globe. So maybe just to kind of briefly mention that all of what you've just shown can also be translated into local device language or also like region specific language. So that's probably just the only thing to note. We do have a question that's come in as well. If you want to take that before we go to the next point.
Sure. If leaders want to engage with frontline employees via Blink, would the leader HR person also require a Blink subscription? Yes, generally that is true. I will tell you, we're not talking about pricing today, but we talked about email subscription costs. I hope you would be pleasantly surprised with the cost of Blink, particularly given the value that can be delivered. But yes, although, Alex, I will say, if your frontline workers are on Teams, we can create a mechanism where if your managers are on Teams, we can create a mechanism for the frontline worker to communicate with that manager via Teams. So we'd love to understand your question a little bit more fully so we can answer it. But I will say, in general, your whole organization would likely be on Blink, particularly for that communications piece, because we want to send those communications across the organization. Maybe you'd see Blink on the desktop and you could still have an intranet perhaps that you launch from Blink. Different organizations sort of approach that in different ways. But again, happy to discuss in more detail. Any other questions there? Nope. Great. Okay. I'm going to then just chat a little bit about adoption rates and across these different verticals. I think one of the things that's important to understand is the level of adoption we're able to achieve with our customers as they look to connect and engage, because we didn't talk about that on that previous slide, but I do think one of the obstacles to sort of conducting this initiative is this perception that the users don't want to engage. And we have found that to not be true, and our adoption numbers certainly support that. Okay, so let's jump into the sort of third portion of this conversation, Harriet, and that's about how we actually accomplish this. So we talk about no email, no problem. Just want to describe how we're connecting employees into the organization and sort of what the downstream impact is once you've made that connection. And I'll
Yeah,
let
sure.
you slides, Harriet, if you have that in front of you, or you want me to do it for you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I can do that. Thank you. I think it would also, I just want to kind of take a moment to touch on one of the polls that we brought up and actually kind of make sure that as I'm answering this, I'm framing it through the lens of that kind of data insight that we had. So I think it was 75% of the attendees that we've got on said that they've actually got a hybrid approach to their workforce that they would probably want within Blink. And that's really important because as much as this is a no email, no problem webinar, it would be amiss to not mention the fact that we completely recognize that there is a subset of individuals within any organization. So head office, it might make sense that they do keep some of their day-to-day tools, licensing associated to, the likes of an Entra or a Google or an Okta. However, it would make sense to then have a subset of individuals, those on the front line that don't have those licenses. And we need a solution and a platform that can have everyone in regardless of the licenses that they have. And so today I'm going to make sure I talk to and nod to how we have built a solution that supports that. Initially, though, no email, no problem. The way that we have kind of come to support that from a solution perspective is Blink has out-of-the-box capabilities, both from an authentication mechanism with a very familiar in the market tool associated to a one-time passcode, 6-digit passcode, and that can be from either a mobile phone number or indeed, if you do have an email, we can use that too. And that's quite familiar with kind of the social media applications that you see in the market. So we find that a lot of users, especially frontline users, are very familiar with that authentication mechanism. However, where we don't have any data attributes associated to an email or a mobile phone, we have the ability to do manager-led activations with QR codes. So we've honestly considered all different avenues where we get kind of, a bit of objection against trying to get into the app. We find ways that we can support that no matter what data we have on record. However, with that, we have found that it really makes sense to consider, meeting the users where they are. So if it is that we have a lot of mobile phones on record, that we support people going down SMS routes. So they would get text messages to say, hey, download Blink. Hopefully they would know what Blink is ahead of time, so they don't just think it's a spam text message. But they could have a tailored SMS message where you can inform them that they are now able to log into Blink. And so we've really kind of considered all of these different, very specific, tailored activation and kind of initial access to Blink methods.
And I will say, Harriet, to that point, sort of the approach we take to implementation and change management is a little bit of our secret sauce. So I showcased those adoption numbers. The application itself is clearly great, but I think the approach we take to driving activation and adoption is also unique. And we've developed a lot of materials and a lot of methodologies around how organizations unique ways based on what that organization culture, geographic setup, what that looks like. We can really develop a plan that helps drive those levels of adoption and activation, to your point.
Yeah. Definitely. If we go to the next slide, actually, just quickly, this will kind of link to one of the core. So I'm a solutions architect here at Blink. I sit with a lot of security and IT teams, and we always go through the differing personas that we have. So to Alex Gentry's point before of having kind of that manager or head office persona also in Blink, we have to make sure we're considering the tools they might use might differ to the tools that the front line might use. And Marcy kind of showcased that within the hub. The hub experience would differ depending on the data that we have against an individual and the way that we've been able to categorize them. So we do have different solutions on offer for the way that we can make that hub and third-party system and tool access brought to an individual that has access to Blink. So the way that we do that is either utilizing internal identity and access management products you might already have. What do I mean by that? It's a long word. The tools that you might have heard on the market already, Entra, Google, Okta, we can support integrations and supporting those identities to remain in place. But Blink does also have an out-of-the-box identity provider capability too. So we find that a lot of customers will work with us in the early design and discovery phases of adopting Blink and making sure that we have considered both user personas so that we are creating integration capabilities with third-party tools, utilizing either ourself, Blink, acting as identity provider, getting your individuals access to third-party tools from within the hub, or supporting having the licenses you already pay for head office staff, and bringing those authentication mechanisms into play as well. So if we go to the next slide, it talks a little bit more to the hybrid approach that we support there. So, for example, if we were to have individuals on a launch day, you're new to downloading and launching Blink within your organization, we would look to people having different authentication mechanisms. What do I mean by that? How they get into the application. So some individuals might use our one-time passcode. That's that 6-digit passcode associated to an email address or a mobile phone number, or indeed they've just come in via the QR code route. And that was probably going to be our frontline personas. If we had individuals that were using SSO with Entra or Okta or Google or insert any identity and access management product, I think SailPoint's used with quite a lot of our customers, then we use SAML 2.0 mechanism under the hood. And I could go into talking a lot on the tech way in which we do that, but I'm conscious that that's not everyone's bag, so I won't spend too long on that. But just note that we have the ability to have conditional logic, which means that we would look at whether an individual is coming in with a domain associated to an SSO, or they're just coming in with a company code attribute, which means we know they need to go down their one-time passcode route. All of this is kind of customizable, and we can support customers with making sure that we've got all of those differing sources of truth from an identity and access management perspective.
Perfect.
Do we want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, I think it's throwing back to me, unless there are any questions, and there are a couple of questions in the Q&A. I'm going to answer those, Harriet, give folks a chance to ask any additional questions, and then we'll wrap up. So we have a question here. Do you provide out-of-the-box integration with SuccessFactors? What about with SAP S/4? Yep, the framework that we're using is basically an API framework. And so to integrate with SuccessFactors, and I know we have customers who are SuccessFactor customers. So similar to how I talked about Workday, we can integrate with SuccessFactors. And SAP S/4, I'm honestly not as familiar with SAP S/4 and the functionality it provides, but because it's a fairly open API mechanism that we leverage for integration, we'd be happy to talk more about it, and Harriet and our solution architect team can just validate that with you. But we, as I said, have integrated with most of the most common HR systems and some of the less common HR systems, so it's pretty open. The other question was, do you have any advice on how we can shift long-standing habits around WhatsApp and help teams see the value in moving on to Blink? So I talked earlier about some of that secret sauce. That is absolutely some of the role our implementation team plays. And also, if you implement Blink, you'll also get to take advantage of our customer success teams, which layer in as part of the engagement. And that is their exact role, is understanding. And we actually have some customers who conducted some sort of event where they burnt a WhatsApp in the middle of a field, a phone with WhatsApp on it. So there's fun ways to do it, and there's compliance ways to do it, and there's ways to encourage and then maybe, force a bit of compliance. So we definitely have a few recommendations on how to move from existing messaging systems. And like I said, that idea that if they're on WhatsApp, somebody leaves the organization, they're still in those WhatsApp groups, that can be a real compliance concern. So there's also sort of invoking this as your employees are onboarding And if you have that turnover, sort of building this muscle early will help. And so you'll probably find your recent joiners, if you're putting them on Blink immediately, that's the muscle they're going to build, and that's the muscle they'll keep. It is the longer term employees that might take a little bit longer, but as I said, we've got some mechanisms to help you do that. So I just want to wrap, and it looks like we're right about on time, so that's good news. So we talked about some of those obstacles in sort of creating this initiative within organizations and why that can stop a project like this in its tracks. So how do you move it along? I think the first thing you have to do is set the intention. What's the why? Why do you think it's important to connect these employees? What value are you going to get through that engagement? And as you look at your long-term transformation roadmap, how will you be able to better support them? And what's the value that's going to bring into the organization? Then I think for your organization, you have to identify the obstacles which are pertinent to you. And you can take a look at that list. I'm sure some of you know the obstacles, but really getting in front of those and working through how you're going to rectify those obstacles, overcome those obstacles is certainly important. The next thing is creating a cross-functional team. We tend to see that this project hits a lot of different departments. So it generally works best when you bring in HR, operations, communications, and IT early and often. And you really need to work together and decide who's going to own the budget, who's going to own the project, and how it's going to execute. It's another obstacle we see is that communications tries to drive this or HR tries to drive this. If everybody's not at least on a bit of the same page, you're going to have a struggle. And then finally, you got to build and sell a business case, something we are absolutely happy to help you do. We have a lot of value levers that we can help you pull. So if you're interested in better understanding what the ROI for an initiative like this can be, please do reach out. Harriet, anything in conclusion? I don't see any more questions. So if we don't get any more coming in, we'll let people have their day back.
Yeah, only conclusion point from me is more just a case of what you just said there around bringing IT and security in, because what we tend to find is that when Blink becomes sticky within an organization and we're really looking at that return on investment piece, that the capabilities we have from an integration perspective mean Blink really becomes the kind of digital front door for your organization. And a lot of the tools that right now might be fragmented or individuals don't even know that they have access to, it's all there in one seamless app. So from me sitting here as a solutions architect that supports our integrations, I would say that that really is something that we find bringing IT in helps to kind of drive that kind of frictionless and bringing Blink in as being sticky within the org.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today and hope you all have a terrific rest of the week.
Thank you.